Hello and welcome, or welcome back to Soul Clinic with Chang. And this morning I'm feeling very different. I woke up very early, much earlier than usual, and it's before sunrise where I am. I woke up at like 5 a.m. and I didn't feel tired. It's weird because I've been feeling real wonky in terms of like my sleep these past couple weeks. So I just feel very different, and I think some of you are feeling the same thing. Something just shifted, and it's been a while since I woke up naturally at this early morning hours, and I can talk to you like this in a quiet setting, and you may even be able to see while I talk the sunrise in the background. I don't know the exact time, but anyways, I just spent the last minute about just talking about myself, and some of you may have just clicked off, and that's okay. But I'm here to just share my full frequency and not just the verbal message or the point of it. Because the point, as I've been talking in many previous videos, the point always is to have fun, to have as much fun in your own way, in the way that you were designed to resonate as much as possible. And that is the greatest contribution and greatest profit you can actually make in this life. So yesterday I was talking about the difference between body knowing and the knowing of the mind, which is not technically not real knowing. It's logical conclusions at best, but doesn't mean that that conclusion is always right. It's never always right. It's never 100% right. That's what I said yesterday. And especially, I think I wanted to address spiritually inclined people about the distinction between the body and the mind. And in many spiritual traditions throughout human history, really, they talk down on the body. I mean, we don't need to go far. It's everywhere. It's in Eastern traditions, it's in Western traditions, it's in Christianity, or even the Old Testament, which comes from Judaism. So it may look to some of you when I say we need to go back to the body knowing from our mind. It may look like a certain type of regression. And it is not. Because evolution is always, it happens in a spiral. So when a spiral goes up like this, when you look from a certain perspective, so for example, I just draw the spiral like this, and when you look down from above, it may look like we're just circling over the same area, especially if the spiral doesn't get bigger, like I drew the first time. If the spiral, the circle stays, the size of the circle stays the same, when you look down, it may look we're just circling and nothing's happening. What is happening is that our bodies are upgrading, and that is partially the reason why I shared how I felt different this morning, because the difference we were feeling here, the evolution that we're going through as as humanity, as a species, it involves change in our bodies. And actually, that is one of the important pieces of it. Our bodies are getting more tuned, and our bodies are getting more spiritual. And so, the simple way of explaining the progression, the evolution, is body, mind, and spirit in that order. But the surprise that's happening now is that the spirit side is not disembodied, it's not outside of the body. The spirit evolution, the stage of evolution that can be called spirit, that happens after the mind, is actually happening in the body. So it's in a way body, mind, and then back into the body with spirit awareness. The upgrade essentially is we are now able to sense and be aware of spirit through our bodies. And the funny part of our minds is that it can get very disconnected from what's actually happening in the body. And it's actually one of the functions of the mind, and it's what the mind has contributed to human evolution, and maybe even you can say modern civilization, because before, when we were cavemen, although we can't actually be really sure about what it looked like being a caveman, or being cavemen as species, men and women. The awareness would have been limited to what's happening in the now. Keeping the body alive in the now, as in response to what's happening in the surroundings. So, hunter-gatherer, if you will. But as we all learned in school, human civilization started with agriculture. And agriculture can only happen if we can think of not just now, but in the future. So if I plant the seed, it will grow and it will return in fruits. It will multiply in the form of fruits or grains. That this is actually better than trying to gather or forage for food. Okay? So the mind, in its capacity to escape and extend itself in time, both in the future direction and the past direction, it's what helped us to grow from cavemen and women to a civilized, that's a loaded word, but a civilized society. And that we have gone, as I like to think, we have exhausted the potential of human mind exclusive of the next part, because human mind can be infused by higher understanding, like spirit understanding. So mind in and of itself, that is what we're experiencing, and the problems the cause of the problems that we're seeing in our society, and everything seemingly coming down, disintegrating, crumbling. And that is all a symptom of the limits of the mind. We have stretched the limits of what could be accomplished with the mind alone, and just the left brain part, logical, intellectual, linear. That's what I mean when I say mind in this context. But maybe because of the stage of evolution we were in when the spiritual and religious traditions that have become mainstream started. Okay, so when they started, maybe humans were not fully developed into the mind awareness. We may have been too caught up in still survival awareness and not be able to think of how our daily, now actions will come back to us in the future. So maybe partially, I think that is the reason why many of the mainstream religious and spiritual traditions now talk about afterlife and heaven and hell kind of thing, because maybe that was needed to curb some of the human behavior from running rampant, only thinking of itself and its own survival, and not thinking of like how it will affect a larger reality. And that was mainly the Old Testament way of maintaining order. Punishment and reward, mainly punishment. And yet, the body is not all bad. Because as I said in previous videos, the problem of the mind is it always, well, it's by its nature dualistic. It has two extremes, and it can function anywhere in between that full spectrum, meaning it swings always between the two extremes. So, it can demonize the body, our mind, and it may think that it has to triumph over our bodies as the prime controller of our lives. But at the most fundamental level, our body is the more real. Our bodies are what lives our physical lives here, because our lives here are fundamentally physical. And the evolution, the most recent one that I'm talking about, the body being able to hold spirit awareness, even in the scientific community, especially people who study the human heart, like the HeartMath Institute, they've been discovering that the heart has its own kind of intelligence that may even exceed that of the brain, which we typically associate where the mind resides, or the mind as we understand it. So I think some people have been calling the intelligence of the heart mind, or something like that. And that is the next level evolution that we're going through. So, because our bodies are upgrading, we can't just think of our bodies as less intelligent than the mind. It's actually more intelligent. Well, we're uncovering the higher intelligence that's accessible through the body. And that is central part of what we're going through in this evolution, in this change. And that calls us to be more present, think less. We can't afford to think less. Although I, myself, having a very active mind, still having a hard time thinking less. Well, these days I let it be distracted to think of other things than my own survival, or planning my own, planning my future. I used to do that a lot. I used to be good at it, well, compared to others, but being good at planning didn't really help me with having a good life, living a good life. Okay, so I was comparatively good when we grade, when they grade my performance in planning against others, and that is how I did very well in academics. It didn't make me, well, I may have been smart, but didn't make me happy, didn't make me relaxed, didn't make me more considerate and compassionate. And what made me more compassionate, what I'm actually more proud of as an accomplishment than any of my intellectual accomplishments, which were pretty groundbreaking. But I always knew that what made me as a human being was my spirit content, not my mental content. And because while I was doing very well in school, I was not satisfied with the level of spiritual development, which later revealed itself to me to be emotional development. There's not much difference. Our emotions, as I always say, is the gateway to our higher awareness, or our spiritual awareness, or spiritual maturity, development, all that. And because, well, we all know that as human beings, we would like to think of ourselves as intellectual beings, but we are not. We are actually fundamentally emotional. And we all know that when intense emotion happens, it always overrides our mental or intellectual understanding. And emotion, well, while the mind is, it separates us. It tends to tear us apart as humans. But what ties us together is emotions. It's the meaning of empathy. We can feel others. That's part of how our bodies are designed. And feeling others it enables us a much deeper understanding compared to just getting others mentally or intellectually, or analyzing their thoughts, their mental positions, trying to like get into their heads or outmaneuver other people by or manipulate by like intellectualizing over where they are or how they feel. So basically what I wanted to say in this video is there's nothing regressive, is that the word, about getting out of our mind and into the body. The attack on the carnal nature of humans it can hold us back. Okay, it had its time and place. Because there were some things that were more important than just day-to-day survival. But now, we need to stop demonizing our own bodies. Because other than this, we don't have a life. We may have a life, but it's not going to be a human life in this physical incarnation. So to be fully human, we need to revisit the body as a sacred temple. That is not mutually exclusive with spiritual development. And not mutually exclusive, but also integral to the spiritual development that we seek. I feel like I went very deep today. And I think I need to give you some time to process all this, because for some of you, it may have been too much. But I enjoyed relaying today's message, and I'll see you in the next one.